Okay, so you want to own a semiconductor factory. And before you say anything, yes, I know. Most people have no idea what a semiconductor even is. They have heard the word, they know it has something to do with computers and phones, but they could not explain it if their life depended on it. So let us fix that right now. Because once you understand what a semiconductor factory actually produces, you will understand why this is the most strategically important industry on planet Earth. More important than oil, more important than banking, more important than any other industry that has ever existed in human history. And I am not exaggerating. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what it costs to build one of these factories, how the money flows in this business, why the United States, China, Taiwan, and South Korea are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in a race to control this industry, and why the outcome of that race will determine which country controls the global economy for the next 100 years. Let us start at the beginning. A semiconductor is a material that can conduct electricity under certain conditions, but not others. The most common semiconductor material is silicon, the same element found in ordinary sand. But when silicon is processed, purified, and engineered at the atomic level, it becomes the foundation of every single electronic device on Earth. Your smartphone has a semiconductor chip inside it. Your laptop has one. Your car has between 1,000 and 3,000 semiconductor chips controlling everything from the engine to the air conditioning to the brakes. The hospital equipment keeping patients alive runs on semiconductor chips. The satellites orbiting Earth run on semiconductor chips. The missiles, the fighter jets, the nuclear submarines, all of them depend entirely on semiconductors to function. Without semiconductors, modern civilization stops. Not slows down, stops. There are no substitutes. There are no alternatives. You cannot run a modern economy without them. This is why semiconductors are called the new oil. Except oil can be replaced eventually with renewable energy. Semiconductors cannot be replaced by anything. They are the permanent foundation of everything that comes next. Now let's talk about what a semiconductor factory actually is. The industry uses a specific word for these factories. They're called fabs, short for fabrication plants. A fab is not like any other factory you've ever seen. It's not a building full of machines assembling parts together. A fab is one of the most technically complex structures ever built by human beings. The air inside a fab must be 10,000 times cleaner than the air in a hospital operating room. A single dust particle, invisible to the naked eye, landing on a semiconductor wafer during production destroys the chip entirely. The workers inside a fab wear full bodysuits called bunny suits that cover every inch of their skin to prevent contamination. The machines inside a fab operate at tolerances measured in nanometers. 1 nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. A human hair is approximately 80,000 nanometers wide. The most advanced chips being produced today have features measured at 2 to 3 nanometers. We are literally building structures smaller than most viruses and doing it billions of times on a single chip the size of a fingernail. This is what a semiconductor factory produces, and this is why building one is unlike anything else in the history of human manufacturing. The history of this industry begins in 1947 at Bell Laboratories in New Jersey, where 3 scientists, William Shockley, Bardeen, and Brattain, invented the transistor. A transistor is a tiny electronic switch that can turn electrical current on or off. It was the fundamental building block that made all modern electronics possible. Those 3 men won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1956. But the real revolution came in 1958 when Jack Kilby at Texas Instruments figured out how to put multiple transistors together on a single piece of silicon, creating the first integrated circuit, what we now call a chip. From that moment, the trajectory of human technology changed forever. In 1965, Gordon Moore, co-founder of Intel, made a prediction that became known as Moore's Law. He observed that the number of transistors that could fit on a chip doubled approximately every 2 years, while the cost of computing fell by half. This prediction held true for 60 years. In 1971, Intel produced the first commercial microprocessor, the Intel 4004, which contained 2,300 transistors. Today, Apple's M3 chip contains 25 billion transistors. That is a 10 million times increase in transistor density in 50 years. Nothing in human history has ever improved at this rate. Not aircraft, not medicine, not agriculture, nothing. Now, let us talk about who controls this industry today, because this is where it gets genuinely shocking. There are essentially 3 types of companies in the semiconductor industry. The first is called an integrated device manufacturer, or IDM. These companies design chips and build them in their own factories. Intel is the most famous example. Samsung is another. The second type is called a fabless company. These companies design chips but own no fabs at all. NVIDIA, the company whose chips power almost every artificial intelligence system on Earth, is fabless. Apple designs its own chips but owns no fabs. Qualcomm, AMD, MediaTek, all fabless. The third category is called a pure-play foundry. These companies own factories but design nothing. They manufacture chips for whoever pays them. And this third category is dominated almost completely by a single company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. Founded in 1987 in Taiwan, TSMC today manufactures approximately 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. Read that again. One company on one island produces 90% of the most advanced chips on Earth. Apple's chips, NVIDIA's chips, AMD's chips, Qualcomm's chips. Almost every advanced chip in your devices was made by TSMC in Taiwan. Taiwan sits 160 kilometers off the coast of mainland China. China claims Taiwan as its territory. If anything disrupts TSMC's production, war, natural disaster, or political crisis, the global economy goes into a shock that makes the 2008 financial crisis look like a minor inconvenience. This is why governments around the world are now spending hundreds of billions of dollars trying to build their own semiconductor factories. The United States passed the CHIPS Act in 2022, committing $52 billion to domestic semiconductor manufacturing. The European Union committed 43 billion euros. China is spending an estimated $150 billion trying to build a domestic chip industry independent of Western technology. The semiconductor factory is no longer just a business. It is a national security asset, and that changes everything about the economics. So how much does it cost to build a semiconductor factory? The answer depends entirely on what generation of chips you want to produce. At the low end, a factory producing older generation chips, the kind used in cars, appliances, and basic electronics, costs approximately $1 billion to $3 billion to build. These are called mature node fabs. The demand for these chips is enormous, and they can be profitable at relatively modest scale. But this is not where the strategic competition is happening. The real race is at the leading edge. A factory capable of producing the most advanced chips at 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers, or below costs $20 billion to $30 billion to build. A single fab. TSMC's newest fab complex in Arizona is expected to cost over $40 billion. Intel's new fab complex in Ohio has a projected total investment of $100 billion over the next decade, making it the largest private investment in a single manufacturing complex in American history. These are not factories. These are economic cathedrals. And unlike a cathedral that takes 100 years to build, these fabs need to be built, equipped, and operational within 3 to 5 years, or the technology they are designed to produce will already be obsolete. Why does it cost so much? The answer is one machine. A single machine that is the most complex and expensive piece of manufacturing equipment ever built by human beings. It is called an extreme ultraviolet lithography machine, an EUV machine. It is made by one company in the entire world, ASML, based in the Netherlands. A single EUV machine costs $150 million to $380 million. A leading-edge semiconductor fab needs 10 to 20 of these machines just to operate. That is up to $7.6 billion spent on a single type of machine before you've bought anything else. The EUV machine works by firing a laser 50,000 times per second at tiny droplets of molten tin. This creates plasma that emits extreme ultraviolet light. That light is then focused through a series of mirrors so perfectly smooth that if you scaled them up to the size of Germany, the largest imperfection would be smaller than a human fingernail. The light is then used to etch circuit patterns onto silicon wafers at nanometer scale. The entire machine weighs approximately 180 tons and contains over 100,000 individual parts. It requires a dedicated team of ASML engineers on site at all times just to keep it running. There is no other company on Earth that can make this machine. ASML has a complete global monopoly on EUV lithography. The United States has pressured ASML successfully to stop selling EUV machines to China. Without EUV machines, China cannot manufacture chips below 7 nanometers. This single export control has set China's advanced chip ambitions back by an estimated 5 to 10 years. One Dutch company making one machine has become a central tool of American foreign policy. This is the world that semiconductors have created. Once you have built the factory, here is what it costs to run every single month. Electricity is the single largest ongoing expense. A leading-edge fab consumes between 100 and 200 megawatts of electricity continuously, roughly equivalent to the power consumption of a small city. At average industrial electricity rates, that is $5 million to $10 million per month just in electricity costs. Chemicals are a third major ongoing cost. Semiconductor manufacturing uses hundreds of different chemicals: acids, solvents, gases, photoresists, many of them exotic, highly pure, and extraordinarily expensive. Total monthly chemical costs for a leading-edge fab run $50 million to $100 million. Workforce costs for 3,000 to 5,000 highly paid engineers and technicians add another $30 million to $70 million per month. Equipment maintenance adds another $20 million to $40 million monthly. Total monthly operating cost for a leading-edge semiconductor fab approximately $200 million to $400 million per month, or $2.4 billion to $4.8 billion per year, just to keep the lights on. Now let us talk about where the money comes in. The core business model of a semiconductor foundry is straightforward. You charge customers a price per wafer to manufacture their chip designs in your factory. A wafer processed on a mature 28-nanometer node costs approximately $3,000 to $5,000. A wafer processed on TSMC's leading-edge 3-nanometer process costs approximately $20,000 to $25,000 per wafer. Each wafer can produce approximately 400 to 480 working chips after accounting for defects.
Apple pays TSMC roughly $45 to $55 per chip in manufacturing cost, and then sells the iPhone containing that chip for $1,000 to $1,200. The foundry captures the manufacturing value, the chip designer captures the product value, and the product value is always larger. TSMC generated total revenue of approximately $69 billion in 2023. Its net profit margin was approximately 38%, meaning it kept 38 cents of profit for every dollar of revenue. Net profit of approximately $26 billion. That profit margin is higher than Apple, higher than Microsoft, higher than almost any other manufacturing company in the world. Apple accounts for approximately 25% of TSMC's total revenue, approximately $15 to $17 billion per year. NVIDIA's AI chips, the chips that power ChatGPT and virtually every large language model in existence, are all manufactured by TSMC. As AI spending has exploded, NVIDIA's revenue has grown from $27 billion in fiscal 2023 to over $60 billion in fiscal 2024. Every dollar of that revenue depends entirely on TSMC. With all this money flowing through the industry, why do semiconductor companies fail? The most instructive failure story is Intel. Intel was the dominant semiconductor company in the world for decades. At its peak, Intel's market capitalization exceeded $500 billion. Then it fell behind. In 2016 and 2017, Intel made critical mistakes in its manufacturing process development, falling behind TSMC in technology advancement for the first time in its history. Apple switched to its own TSMC-manufactured chips in 2020. AMD gained significant market share as its TSMC-manufactured chips outperformed Intel's offerings. Intel's market capitalization fell from a peak of over $290 billion in 2020 to approximately $90 billion by 2024, a loss of $200 billion in shareholder value. The second failure story is GlobalFoundries. In 2018, after spending approximately $9 billion on their 7-nanometer program, GlobalFoundries abandoned the effort entirely. The company concluded that it could not generate a sufficient return on the capital required. If GlobalFoundries could make the economics work with $9 billion of investment, the challenge facing new entrants in leading-edge semiconductor manufacturing is almost incomprehensibly difficult.
So, should you own a semiconductor factory? Let us look at the numbers one final time. Building a leading-edge fab, $20 to $30 billion. Annual operating costs, $2.4 to $4.8 billion. Time to first meaningful revenue, 4 to 5 years. Annual capital reinvestment required to stay competitive, $5 to $10 billion per year, every single year, forever. Revenue potential at scale, $30 to $70 billion per year. Net profit margin, 25 to 40% in favorable conditions. Payback period, 8 to 15 years if everything goes right. My verdict? Semiconductor manufacturing is the most capital-intensive, technically complex, and strategically important business that exists on Earth today. It is not a business for entrepreneurs. It is not a business for private equity. It is barely a business for the largest corporations in the world. TSMC took 35 years of continuous reinvestment to build what it has today. There are no shortcuts. There are no disruptions coming that will suddenly make this easier or cheaper. But for the companies that can sustain this, the reward is control of the foundational technology of the 21st century economy. Every smartphone, every laptop, every AI system, every autonomous vehicle, every piece of military hardware, all of it runs on chips. And the companies that make those chips sit at the center of the most important industry in human history. That is the economics of owning a semiconductor factory. The most expensive, the most complex, and arguably the most important business on Earth. Subscribe.